Hey everybody, I just want to go over some details and some explanations for the first assignment of the second unit to make sure everybody's on the same page. So let's jump over to my website and we'll take a look. So where you want to go here is you want to go to obviously Computer Science 20S and the assignments or the assessments page. And then we're going to scroll down. We could go to the detailed or the simple list. We're going to go to the detailed list here. Into Unit 2, we're going to take a look at this design assignment here. Now, this is also under the assumption that you've already taken a look at the content for Unit 2. And in the content of Unit 2, there's two parts. Part 1 should be looked at before you take a look at this assignment, and Part 2 would be before the rest of the assignments. So in Part 1, you would have found an explanation of what this IDE called Visual Studio is, how to use it, some concepts behind the idea of object-oriented programming. Now remember, you can look at this on the web page or in the presentation or video. So in looking through this, some of the concepts of object-oriented programming will come up, along with the basics of how to start Visual Studio, how to set up a project, which project to access, and stuff like that, right? All the details you'd need for getting started, and then how to set up a basic program where you use the toolbox and the properties window to build a basic design on there. So please read that first, or look at the PowerPoint, or watch the video to have an idea about the first assignment, okay? Now, if you're at home and you haven't yet installed the software, then you also need to go to the help page of the main site, and then scroll down to the section here on the Microsoft Visual Studio software and take a look at that section right there on how to get the software. And probably you should read the instructions I've given here on how to set that up, or watch the video on how to set up Visual Studio, how to set up a project and stuff like that. So those are all under the assumption that you've done all those. Okay, so now back to the assignment. So we're back here. We're going to open up the first assignment of the second unit. This is a 3-page assignment, okay, but don't be intimidated by that. Really, the assignment is on page 2, okay? If I just look at page 2, what your assignment is going to be is to create these 5 designs. These 5 designs would be created, okay, by you. And for these 5 designs, you want to match what's on here as close as possible. This is not a creative assignment. You're not, being artistic. You're not changing fonts and colors. You're trying to match this design as closely as possible. Now, back to why it's a 3-page assignment. Page 1 is basically instructions and a couple hints, and page 3 goes over the details of how it's going to get handed in. All of this I'm going to also go over in this video right now. Okay, so here you can see on page 1, at the top of page 1, it says that the purpose of this assignment, as I just mentioned, is to recreate these 5 designs or 5 forms, that's the term Visual Studio uses, as closely as possible. Okay, they're not going to look exactly the same because 1, this assignment was made in an older version of Windows, and 2, there's a couple other little differences. Okay, also, this is a design assignment. These programs that you're creating will not do anything. They will just look like the designs there. Getting it to be able to do stuff is what the rest of the course is going to focus on, learning how to code and get them to do things. This is just a design assignment. Okay, so you can see here I say it's an exercise in getting used to Visual Studio, designing things, working with the toolbox, and changing properties. That's the goal of this assignment. Okay, also, this first little part of the instruction says that one change you will make to every one of the designs is you will put your name right here, don't put my name, and what question number it is. That's the only part for each of these designs that will be a little different. That'll have your name on it, right? And this one will have your name on it. But the rest of the design will try to mimic it as closely as possible. Okay? So, while that's happening, I'm going to start Visual Studio in the background. And if you've gone through that first part, you now know how to create a new project. Hopefully you've set all the settings, so you don't have to put in the settings the second time. They're all set up there to do a Windows Form app, and you can just go next. And all you really need to do is give it a name. So you can give it whatever name you want, but I would strongly suggest you give it a name that you can find later if you need to. So I'm just going to call this a design assignment. I think that's a pretty good name. At least that will allow me to find it later if I need it in some way. And then I'm just going to hit create. Again, you should have already done this if you went through the first part 1 of this unit. So that will get Visual Studio up and running. Now, when you start it, it will most likely look like this, okay, not like it was on my screen. So a couple quick tips about setting up Visual Studio. This little solution explorer along the side, you probably aren't going to need that. So what I want you to click is the little pin up there. What that does is it doesn't hide it. It just sort of slides it over to the side here, sort of like closing a drawer, puts it away. If you need it back, you can just click it again. And if you really want it there permanently, you can pin it back on there, and then it's back there. But I don't think you need the Solution Explorer. You will need this thing called the Properties window, so leave that there. Then over on the other side, on the left side, you're going to need the toolbox. So I'm going to click the toolbox, and I'm going to suggest you pin the toolbox down. So it's pinned there. In the toolbox, you've got categories of the different sort of things, the different tools. If you want them all Windows Forms is what you're going to need. More likely, you can just use the one called Common Controls, but I'm going to use the one just called All Windows Forms and click on the little triangle. This will expand it and let you see all the tools in there. This toolbox is also searchable, so if you need to search it, you can. But I'm just going to click All Windows Forms. That way I've got every tool I need. Okay, so again, if you've seen this, you know the process of building a design is step 1, you take a tool from the toolbox, put it on your design. Once you have a tool on your design, or a control, you use the Properties window to change something about that control. Okay, so that's going to be the process as I go through this first assignment. All right, so I'm going to give you tips for this first assignment, do this one for you guys to show you how I would do this one. I am not going to do the other 4, but I will give you some tips for the other 4 as I go through it. By the way, if you're viewing this from my InformNet site, I just want to take a second to also open up the same web pages on my InformNet site, just so you can see the difference, right? I'm doing this one on my one site. You might as well see what it looks like on the InformNet site as well, just to get a feel for it. Okay, so obviously to build this thing, I'm going to need these 2 things here. These look like buttons, so let's get started putting some buttons on our design. So from the toolbox over here, I'm going to grab the button. I'm just going to drag it and drop it over here. That's one way you can do it. You can also double click it. That moves it over there. Or you can single click it and click and drag to draw it on. So 1, I can drag and drop it. 2, I can double click it. Or 3, I can single click it and then click and drag to draw it on. If I want to get rid of it, I select it and I press the delete key, not the backspace key, the delete key. It's gone. Anyways, there's 2 buttons. And now I need to figure out how to make this thing here. Also, for those of you doing this through the Grade 10 InformNet site, under Content, right, under Assessments, it's the same page here. Looking at the simple list here, I'm looking, let's go here. I'm looking at the Programming Design Assessment, but clicking that would open the exact same thing as the other website there. So it's all the same stuff, okay? All right, so I just want InformNet students to know that I'm not doing something different that you wouldn't encounter as well. All right, so now I need this thing. And I'm not sure what that is. What tool is that? So now I'm going to go back to page 1. At the bottom of page 1 is a series of hints. Rather than have to search through the entire toolbox and figure out what it is, what I've done is narrow down the list here to these are the tools that maybe you're going to need. Okay? So as I go to use this thing and build this right here, try to figure out what that is. Go back to those hints up here, and maybe it's this thing. It's text. Maybe it's a text box. So I'm going to try it. There will be an element of experimenting with this first assignment. So I try T for text box, and I put it over there, That doesn't look quite right. Why is it white like that? That doesn't look right. So I'm going to delete it, and I'm going to go back to my hints and maybe try again. Scroll through the hints, and maybe I found it, maybe you didn't. With each of these hints, just like they appear in the toolbox, you want to look for two things. One, the word might be a clue to you. Oh, button, that makes sense. But two, the picture might be a clue to you, or some combination of those two. So as I look through this, I see this thing that says label with the letter A. That would turn out to be the right object. So if I go to label and put it on there, that's the right thing. So this is going to be where my words go. I got two buttons. I got the form itself. I have all the objects I need. Now I got to change my attention and go over to the properties window. Let's start with one of the buttons. I can select it right here, click on it to select the button. If you accidentally double click it, you're going to get to the coding part. We're not doing coding for this first assignment. So if you accidentally get to code, use the tab up here to switch back to design. And if you have to, you can also X out the code. You don't need that really right now for this assignment. So now I'm back to the design. So now I'm back on the properties window. Another way to change is at the top of the properties window is a little drop-down box that allows you to select your objects. So if I wanted to change something on the label, that's another way I could select it. I could use my mouse and select it that way, or I can use the drop-down at the top of the properties window. But let's stick with the button for now. When you select an object, the properties window will by default select one of the properties. In this case, it's the one called text. That happens to be the correct one. By default, it's going to pick the one you're most likely going to change, and that one is one we're going to change. At the bottom of the properties window is an explanation of each property, so that'll help. Also, it is a good idea if your properties window is sorted in alphabetical order. That'll make it easier, especially at the beginning. So turn on this option right here to sort it in alphabetical order. Now back to text. I select the property here, and I change something on the right side of it. So I don't want it to say button 1. I want it to say the word yes. So I'm going to type in there the word yes. And when I hit enter, it now locks it in over on this side. I've changed that property. Now I'm going to go to the next button. You're going to find you're going to get quicker at this now. Select the next button, select text, type in no, hit enter, it changes the property. Select the label, select text, type in welcome to the world of application design, etc., etc., etc. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but there it is. It's changed. So now I get back to this, and I'm like, okay, now I'm getting closer. This looks like this. I need to shrink my form and make my buttons a little longer, but I'm getting closer, so I'm going to make the buttons a little longer. Space them out, maybe a little bit. Whoops, I did what I said. Accidentally went to code. Make these a little smaller. There we go. Put this in position. Put these in position. Resize the form. Okay, that looks pretty good. It's getting closer to what looks like right here. Now I know it won't be perfect because in this older version of Windows they rounded the corners. It used a slightly different color of blue or green here. I know that, but it's getting closer. But then the other important thing you need to remember is you need to add your name and the question number here. So back to the design, select the form. Now I changed the text on the form to be, let's imagine my name was John Smith. This is my question 1. Now we're talking. Ooh, don't capitalize my last name. Let's try that again. There we go. Now we're talking. Now, these 3 buttons right here, I do not care. You can leave those as is. That doesn't matter to me. This little icon thing right here, that doesn't matter to me. So don't worry about those. Don't waste your time with those. What matters is it's got your name in it and the question number, and that the inside part of it looks as close to the design as possible. That's how you're going to do the assignment. And then you're going to go to the next one and the next one like that. Okay. Now let's focus on the third page of this assignment, how you will eventually hand it in. Now, I'm going to back up a little bit to the middle part of the first page and make a statement right now. For this entire course, actually let me jump here so you guys know how important this is that I'm mentioning this to you guys. For every assignment, for every programming assignment, so Unit 1 didn't matter, that was the intro unit, but from this unit on, for every single assignment in this course, you will never hand in a Visual Studio folder or Visual Studio files for the assignments you do. Dramatic pause. What? So why am I using Visual Studio if I'm never going to hand in those Visual Studio files? Well, I don't need to see the project folder to know that you did the work. Okay, here's what you're going to hand in. For any project you do, I need to see two things. One, I need to see a picture of your design. And that's what we're going to learn how to do, how to take a picture of a design, because we just did a design. Two, I'll need to see all the code that you write. For this assignment, it won't matter. There is no code. But if you think about it, that's all I need. I need to see the code. That's really important. That's me taking a look at the engine behind your program. And the pictures show me that it worked, that it did what it was supposed to do. Now, when I say pictures, I'm not going to have you guys hold up a camera and snap a picture of your screen. That's not what I'm talking about. So now let's jump back to the website. And let's jump back to here. What you guys are going to be doing is taking a picture, also known as a screen capture, of your design right on your computer. Computers can do this. They can take pictures of stuff. So let's go back and do this. However, as it says, if you read the last page of this assignment, you're going to take screen captures of all 5. This is the important part when they're running. So you run your program and then take the picture. What I don't want to see is a picture of it sitting like this in Visual Studio. So we need to start or run our program first. Since this first one's done, I'm going to do that. I'm going to run the program. Here it is, running right now. What I want is a picture of that. So the instructions on page 1 tell you how to do that. You hold down the Alt key on your keyboard and press this key that says Print Screen. You'll find that key just above the arrow keys on your keyboard. Maybe you've never pressed it before. Okay? Also, depending on your laptop or the computer you're using, you might have to hold down something like a function or an FN key as well. I don't know. I don't know what keyboards and what kind of computers you guys are using. But let's just assume it's just hold down Alt and press Print Screen. So this is running. I'm going to do that right now. Alt Print Screen. What just happened is it took a picture of that. Now, we don't know that, but it did. And here's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to suggest you guys start up a program like Microsoft Word. It's the one I suggest. It's the program I actually suggest you use, is a program like Microsoft Word. If you don't have Word and you have to use a different program, PowerPoint or Google Docs, that might work too. But I really strongly suggest you use Microsoft Word. Okay? If you don't have Microsoft Word, I might be able to get it for you. So email me if you have an issue with that. If you want Microsoft Word but you don't have it, email me and I can probably help you out with that. Okay, now that I've got Microsoft Word open, all I need to do is that picture I took has been copied and I just paste it. So I'm just going to hit the little paste button. There's my picture. Now, I made a mistake I'm glad I made. I forgot to hold down Alt when I did this. If you don't hold down Alt, it takes a picture of the entire screen. And I really don't need the whole screen. Holding down Alt and then taking the picture, come on. Holding down Alt will capture just a picture of the thing that's running. Now, this might be, okay, 1 second, guys. My apologies. Okay, let's try this again. Oh, shoot. One more time. Trust me, I'm qualified to do this. Okay, here we go. Print screen. Alt print screen. Paste. There it is. There's the picture of my design that I need. What you're going to hand in for every programming assignment in this course is a Microsoft Word document. That's it. Just one document for the assignment. Because on that document, I can see a picture of what you designed. That's perfect. I can mark that. And once we get to coding, you'll be able to put the code into the Word document as well. They'll be able to mark it that way as well. I will go over that once we get to the coding part. Now, I don't need you to make 5 Word documents for each 5 assignment. Here's question 1. I've got room on this document. I can put question 2 right here as well. So I'm just going to use this Word document to hand in all 5 of the assignments. And this is also covered on the final page of this, right? Screen capture all 5, put them into a saved Microsoft Word document, and then, just like you did in the first unit, when you save this Word document, save it with your name. So let's do that right now. Again, imagine I'm John Smith. So I'm going to save this to my desktop. Call it John Smith Designs or something like that. What's important is your name is in the name of the Word file, so when it gets handed in, I know it's yours. Okay, now I go back to Visual Studio. I need to stop the program from running. So the easy way would be I could hit the red X to close it out, right? We already knew that. But another thing you can do in Visual Studio is when a program's running, the start button won't be a start button anymore. And now there'll be a little stop button you can click. You'll also notice when a program's running, it hides the toolbox. So that's another clue to you that your program's running right now. So I'm going to stop my program. Okay. Now I can go on and start building the second assignment, the second problem here. Okay. Now, if you want, you can build a brand new Visual Studio project and build the second one, but I think that's a waste of your time as well. I'm done with this one, so why don't I just delete the stuff on it, select this and change this to question 2, and now I can just build up question 2. Easy. So now moving to question 2, I'm going to give you a couple tips for question 2. I'm not going to build the whole thing like I did with question 1, because for one reason, you already know how to do labels, and you know now how to do buttons and how to change stuff on there. But what you maybe don't know how to do is this thing, and this thing. So I'm going to give you some tips for that. All right, once again, let's assume you know how to make a label. You know how to make a button. So this is stuff you already know. And now you're going in and making this thing right here. Okay? What is that? Well, as I've already shown, use the tips. Scroll through the tips, and eventually you would have found that that thing is the combo box. The other thing you'd need, the date time picker. Maybe you thought it was the month calendar. Maybe when you were experimenting with this, you thought, how do I make that thing with a date on it? And you tried month calendar. That would have been a good thing to try. You would have went down to month calendar. You would have went, oh, no, that's not it. You would have eventually found it's the thing called the date time picker. You would have found that other thing is called a combo box. And the final thing was called a checkbox. So you would have built up your program like that to make it look kind of like the one that's on there as close as possible. But then you realize, well, my checkbox isn't checked off. So now another tip for you guys. Some of the things you can do when your program's running, not just a property change. So for this one, yeah, maybe you wanted to change the property so it said choose name. So you went to text, you typed in choose name, it looks good. But how do I check this thing? It's not text. Text is how I can make it say send reminder, but that's not how I check it off. Well, some of these things can be done after you run it. So what you can do is set it up, run it, and then, for example, check off the checkbox. And that's also a way you can change the date to go all the way back to 2011 into July on the 11th. So that's a way you can get question 2 to look more like what you're expecting it to look like. Then go Alt print screen, over to Word, paste it in there. Now I got 2 done. Once I'm done 2, hit stop or hit the red X, clear off this here, change it to question 3. Now I'm going to give you some tips for question 3, and then 4, and then 5, and then I'll wrap up this video. Hopefully now you have an idea how to go through and do the assignment. Let me give you a couple tips for this one here, question number 3. Okay? So you know how to do these now, these check boxes. You just saw me do it. You know how to use these buttons. You saw me how to do it. You know how to make a label. You didn't know how to make this thing, but maybe if you were watching, in your experimenting, you would have seen that's the thing called month calendar. You think you might know how to do this one, and you probably do. It looks like a label, but there's actually something else I want to show you about that one. This isn't a label. I'll show you what that is in a second. And this is clearly something new to try as well. What is that thing? So you go up to the hints. And for example, yes, there's a label, but look what's right underneath it. It's called a link label. It's already blue, and it's already underlined. So that's going to make sense. Also, notice this weird thing here. It has a little X, Y, and a gray line around the outside, called a group box. Why, that is exactly what that thing looks like, a box that groups things in. Finally, the little scrolling bar, you'll find there's 2 of them. One here uses the H scroll bar, and one over here uses V scroll bar. And the little pictures give you a clue that one is a horizontal and one is a vertical scroll bar. Okay, so now I kind of know what everything is. So I could start with the group box. That's what groups things. And I could change the text on that to match this. So it says parent options, right? So I could do that and have that change. Already know how to do check boxes. Already know how to do buttons. Link label is a new one, but I can use that one to make that happen. Month calendar, we kind of encountered with our experimenting, the month calendar. Okay, so you can see here how that all starts to build up. Okay. Finally, this vertical scroll bar, horizontal scroll bar, go to H, this is alphabetical, drop it on there, resize everything. Now I'm building up question 3. I run it. I know it's not done, but you get the idea. Alt print screen, take a picture, over to Word, paste it in. 3 done. Back to Visual Studio, stop it, clear it off, change the question number to question 4. We're getting much faster now at doing this. Let's get some tips for question 4 now. All right, question 4 I think is the hardest one. It's got a few different things on it that I want to give tips for. One, this thing. Oops. And with question 4, you will notice I gave a little yellow arrow box here that does say you can use any picture you want. Don't expect to use this picture. Use any picture you want. And this thing can be anywhere along the progress bar. Ooh, there's the hint. Okay, but I got a few other things I got to figure out what they are. What is this thing and this thing? Well, these are a couple labels. I know what those are. I just figured out what a group box is. But what are these things? And more importantly, what is this thing? And how do I do a picture? So lots of questions there. Let's jump up to the hints. Okay. So picture, oh, there's a picture box. I bet you that's what that is. tab control, look at the little picture, that would probably be how I do the tabs. Okay. And radio button, oh, okay. And look at this thing, a numeric up-down and a text box. Well, there's all the stuff I need. Let's start putting it together. So, starting with that, maybe that thing called a tab control. That looks good. One thing you'll notice about the tab control, it's a little tricky, is there's only 2 tabs, and you need 3 for this to work properly. So by default, when tab control is selected, right here, it goes to this thing called collection, and when you click on that, you'll notice a button with 3 dots on it called an ellipse. Anytime you see a button with 3 dots, it means when you click that button, more choices are going to come up. So let's do that. With the more choices now, I can add and remove tabs. So that's how I can get a 3rd tab here. I can add one. Now I got 3 tabs. How do I change each tab? Well, notice another list of properties over here that I can also sort alphabetically. Now I can go to the text of each one individually and put in my own word for each tab. And then it changes it up here, right? So that's how I can do the tab thing. It's a little tricky, so I wanted to give you that tip. Okay, so that's done. Already know how to do a group box. Oh, group box. So I already know how to do that. Already saw what radio button is. Drop that on there. So that gets me through that part. Already know how to do a label. And I saw that thing called numeric up-down. Looking good. Might have to make it a little smaller. But looking good. I'm getting all of this there. Already know how to do a label. And I discovered that thing called text box. Obviously, I'm not spending the time on this assignment you will need to spend to set all the properties and put everything in place, but you'll start getting used to this program more and more. Okay? Also, I've already talked about this progress bar. I got one little tip for that thing. Put on progress bar. There it is. And you'll notice it's on there, but it's not filled up. There's no progress showing. I need to fill this thing up part of the way. How do I do that? Once again, the tips I'm saying to you, when you select an object, what is the default one it goes to? And right now it's going to value. Because it's not really text to change on this thing. And it's a number. Well, what if I typed in a number like 75 and hit enter? Oh, that's how you fill it up. Filled up 75% of the progress bar. Oh, that's a good tip. Finally, the last thing on this one is a picture. We saw that there's this thing called a picture box. But there's a couple tricks to working with pictures. Tip number 1 with pictures. You can't do what you do in other programs like copy and paste a picture over. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. What you need to do is you need to find a picture and save the picture. So I'm just going to do a quick Google search for something simple like cats. Grab a weird picture of a cat. Let's go with that one. Okay? I'm going to right click, save that picture. You should know how to save a picture. Okay, actually I'm not going to use that one. I'm going to switch to a different picture just because that one was in a weird format. Here's a JPEG. That's a pretty good picture. Save it to my desktop. There's a new internet format. This is why I didn't choose that original one. Visual Studio hasn't caught up to using that type of picture yet. That type of picture, just a quick tip. This JFIF, it's actually still a JPEG, but it's a weird format. You'd have to rename it for Visual Studio to work. I'm not going to bother. I just used a JPEG. So it should be sitting on my desktop right now. There it is, JPEG. There's the Word file, by the way, that I'm going to hand in when I'm done. But anyways, once I have the picture box on my design, by default when it's selected, the property it goes to over here is image. Right now it says none. Notice the button with the 3 dots, the ellipse, which means when I click it, more choices are going to pop up. So let's click it. Once this box pops up, you're going to import this picture you just saved. So let's do that. Import, desktop, picture, open. Then the picture's there. I click OK. Now, unfortunately, it won't work the way you expect. The picture will not get resized automatically for you. So I have one more tip about picture boxes. There's another property you want to change. Notice the image is now set to the picture we downloaded. But if you want to resize the image, you also want to play with this property called size mode. Wouldn't be one you would have intuitively found. Size mode is what allows you to stretch out the picture. And what you want to do is set it to the property in there called zoom. You can play with the other ones if you want. You'll see what they do. But zoom is probably the one you want. Now the picture will resize with the box. More like programs you're used to. When you resize the box, it resizes the picture. Now I got it. Now I got kind of everything I need here to get this one done. Everything done on that one. I would then run it. Snap my picture, Alt print screen, put it over in Word, paste it in, one left. I think that one was the hardest one. In this final one, I'm going to give you a couple tips, but I'm not going to give you the full set of tips I've been giving. In this one, okay, and yes, there's a little yellow arrow here. Try to duplicate this best as possible. Couple tips right in this. Toolbar is a tip, and browser is a tip right here, those words. Because what you're going to do with this is I don't want you making Google. I don't want you doing that. I don't want you putting these buttons on here. Instead, the tools you're going to use in this one, from the tips area up here, I'll tell you which tools you're going to need. You are going to need the web browser. That will automatically get you to Google. You are going to need the tool strip. That's how you add what normally is called a toolbar. You are going to use the menu strip. That's how you add little menus to this. And you're going to need one that's not, I forgot to add on here, and I didn't really forget. I'm trying to push you guys a little bit. But here's the tip. You're going to need one in the toolbox called the status strip. You're also going to need that one. That's it. Okay? You're not going to need any buttons and stuff like that. Between the menu strip, the tool strip, the web browser, and the status strip, what you'll find is you'll be able to build this thing. Allow me to demonstrate quickly. Web browser, tool strip, status strip, and menu strip. It's going to place them on your design, and you're going to have to experiment with how I make a menu. Trust me, by using this, you will slowly start to figure out how this essentially works. It's really not that difficult to figure out how this works. When you eventually run this, you'll realize that you just made a menu. Okay? You will start to figure out how to make toolbar buttons. So when you go to make, right, like little buttons and little drop downs and stuff like that on the toolbar, you will start to realize by playing around with this how you can add buttons, how you can add combo boxes, okay, and add those to your design, how you could add labels if necessary and stuff like that. Same with the status strip down here, how you can add progress bars and labels. And then once you have them, how you can change properties. So all the stuff you'd already learned, you can start to do that again and change the text of this to be whatever you want on there, okay? This is how you will start to build this. And with the web browser, by default, it sets it to the website URL. So from here, you can either copy or paste or type in a Google address, oops, get it right, don't screw it up like I just did, to actually have it navigate right to Google. So that by the time you get this thing done and run it, it's going to look like the design, the best as possible. You're then going to take your screen capture over to Word and place the final one on the design. If you have any questions, email me, but that was a long video to explain how to do the first assignment. Good luck, and if you have any questions, email me.